We spent 3 days interviewing 20 researchers, engineers, and founders at AI Engineer World's Fair Conference in San Francisco who are building and guiding the next generation of AI. And now I'm going to share a lot of that key information with you. In all of the conversations that we had, I personally saw 3 big themes emerge. Collaboration, AI as your teammate, someone that you're collaborating with. Autonomy, agents running real workflows. Trust and safety, governance that you should be able to rely on. I wanted to know from them, first, why does the world care so much about AI agents? The answer, execution.
Execution is the motto, but I think that in our world of AI today, it's critical. It's a survival skill. I do believe that AI is really revolutionizing everything as we know it.
What the AI tech stack could potentially be for the average developer. What do you believe that to be at this current stage?
The most important thing for a lot of developers is to understand the basic sort of like principles of like AI agents. So agents, workflows, tools, RAG, Evals, tracing. Once you get there, there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of get there. But I think we're at a stage where the principles and the primitives are actually more important than the stack per se.
It isn't about picking the hottest framework. It's about understanding and really honing in on the principles and the primitives that matter most.
So the AI stack today is actually a model, LLM, and most likely an agent framework, so something like LangGraph, ADK, and then a set of tools. You integrate your data sources, your databases, your APIs, and then what you really want to have is also an eval framework that makes sure that your AI application is doing what you want it to do. But in the end, it's a human who is accountable for the decision, right? So you can always kind of delegate and say, oh, the computer decided or the AI decided ABC. But I am a human, as a human, if I'm doing my job, I'm accountable for what comes out of this. And so I basically need to take the judgment that comes out of this, validate it with my expertise, and then actually, make the judgment call myself as a human to say yes, true or false. And then my own biases can play into this, yes. Right? But that's something that we've had for 2 million years.
Even we saw it here, one of the first MCP workshops, the room was packed. The photo kind of went a little viral on Twitter. Why is MCP such a big deal?
I think it's a really big deal because it's standardizing this approach for tool use among LLMs. I was actually part of implementing tool use in our SDK when our Palmyra 4 model came out. And when you're building tools from scratch, there's a lot of boilerplate that you have to do. And so if you're just doing simple operations for like file manipulation and GitHub repo manipulation, you don't really want to have to build those same things from scratch over and over again. And so MCP standardizes that process. And that was sort of the first layer. And now you're seeing all of these other companies standardizing that for their own software and for their own platforms. And I think that's really unlocking that superpower. Yeah, I think there's some core skills that you need to learn in AI engineering as a developer. So I would say things like, aside from just basic prompting, I would say retrieval augmented generation, RAG, that's something you really need to dig deep into and to learn. I would say multi-modality, learning how to work with images, video, that kind of thing with LLMs. And then once you really are crossing into production, you really need to start to learn about evals, which is sort of like unit testing for AI engineering. But it's super important to learn how to look at your data, follow the traces of what's happening in your application, build some smart evaluation metrics around that. That's really going to be the key distinguishing factor between somebody who's just sort of like hacking around with an AI tool versus a developer, an engineer who can put something into production.
Now, AI World's Fair Conference, one of the co-founders is Swix, and he did his thing. This floor, this expo hall was incredible.
The one and only Swix.
Hi everyone, welcome to the conference. 3,000 of you, all of you registered last minute. Thank you for that stress. I actually can quantify this. I call this the Gini coefficient for the AIE organizer stress. This is compared to last year. It is. Please just buy tickets earlier. You're going to come. Just do it. Okay. We also like to use this conference as a way to track the evolution of AI engineering. Those are the tracks for last year. We've just doubled every single track for you. So basically, it's double the value.
Theme 1, collaboration. Everywhere I looked, speakers emphasize using AI not to replace us, but to partner with us.
If you're a scientist and you want to have the same experience as a pair programmer, but you actually want a pilot to be with you in the lab, you're kind of forced to use voice, right? Because your hands are busy.
Hands are busy and voice is the new UI.
You're doing experiments, you're like manipulating objects. And the same can be applied to many other situations. Like let's say you are in a factory and you need to fix something, or you're working on a robot, or you're repairing your car or your bike. There's so many situations where you need AI assistance, but your hands are busy, right? So we are seeing a lot of demos in that space with the glasses that were big this year, right? Like the I/O glasses from Google and the Meta, and but your phone is already there, right? So we could already do so much with the phone. So having these responsive real-time applications that can process like voice, video, put the phone somewhere, it can kind of have a context of what I'm doing, and I'm talking to it to give commands, and it's keep talking to me back. Maybe I have headphones because I don't want anyone else to hear that. There are lots of implications around privacy, and also I think we're gonna see many more people kind of talking to their devices. Like what I'm seeing, most of the developers now are using Whisperflow, which just has Whisper under the hood, just because it's so much faster when you're using coding agents to talk to them than to type. But yeah, I think that's going to become the norm, that we start talking to things, even if like we don't want to, like it's not customer support or the application is not designed for voice interaction, but as a new way of kind of interacting with LLMs and getting inference in real time for a task.
I was chatting with somebody at a consulting company yesterday, and he was mentioning that right now a lot of manual work is happening around getting like a spreadsheet of like a bunch of data, and actually have a human like making like giving a categorization for this data. And like when you have like thousands of like repetitive actions, like humans tend to make mistakes because they're bored, or like this is annoying and this kind of things. And so this is where AI can actually be a lot more accurate, even though it's not perfect, than a human, because now it can actually like never get tired, never get bored, and always going
That's
to do
true.
the right thing.
That's a big concern in healthcare, right? Like prescribing the wrong thing. But then again, you know, there is a lot to say that AI can help prescribe the right thing because it's not a human decision. Now it's looking at all the historical data of your medical records, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe it can make better decisions for you.
Yeah, and I think for this, the interesting thing is, I think the decision at the end of the day should be made by like a human. But now what AI can do is actually give all of the information and
Help
do it
inform better.
in a very fast way, in order to like do a lot better work. And so, for example,
I'm trying to actually like keep up with the agent at this point. I treat it almost like I'm a cook in the kitchen and there's multiple burners going. It's like, okay, I have the server cooking over here, I have the client code cooking over here, and I got to just check back and forth to make sure it's working. And I get like twice or three times as many things done in a day.
What's called AI is always changing, right? So like the 25 years ago, like the chess, chess computer was called AI because, and now it's just like, it's just a chess simulator, like now AI is something different. So I think the meaning of the word AI is kind of shifting as like what people like, as those tools get better, so suddenly it becomes normal, and the AI is the sort of the new thing, that's even better, right?
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a buzzword, right?
It's not about human in the loop. It's about accountability in the loop.
Yes.
Because as we move into this agentic era, and we're looking at these chains of agents, we need to understand and program that accountability into the process. So algorithmic literacy just means that you understand there is a mathematical probability of what's coming to you. And that when you get a piece of information
So like you understand exactly why it's
technology,
happening. Okay.
when you
Makes
get a
sense.
piece of information from technology, you recognize that it was customized for you.
Yeah.
And that it's not just the truth.
Right.
Because it's, at the top of your search.
Yeah.
Like it can give you both sides of an equation and like give you all of the facts as close as it can. Don't trust but verify is what I would say, is like make it do the hard work. It's very easy for it to like run a one-off script or write a bash script to go verify the things that it is telling you are actually accurate based on the knowledge that's available. So use that and have that guide your decision. But I wouldn't give it off to the LLMs to make that decision yet, just because it's not, like, you don't know what it's trained on or how it's going to react, and it's going to.
It increases the importance of having things like TypeScript. So
Yeah.
like being able to not just even run like your code through TypeScript, but then having the code that the AI writes run through TypeScript again, including things like tests. Like we started moving over to compiling all of our tests just to make sure that that actually works.
Potential for intelligent applications is skyrocketed in a way that we have not yet seen, and we have a lot yet to cover.
Do you think that like working with an LLM effectively does require a degree of skill? And for me, I think it's a fun skill to develop.
Yeah.
How do I prompt the LLM so that it provides the proper result? And that's getting easier and easier with time. But also, how do I work with the LLM so that I'm balancing it actually being helpful and also me having fun guiding it?
Simply because we cannot trust AI today the way it is. It's a fascinating tool, but you have to check its inferences every time.
Yeah.
I haven't come across AI deniers. I've come across a lot of people who have who are not accustomed to using AI for coding, especially. And that's because it's a new tool. You're asking people to do something new, and there's resistance. It's human nature. But what I've seen is a lot of young people have started adopting AI. So they are tending to be as efficient as experienced people. Obviously, they lack that bit of experience, so there's some learning curve there. But when we are hiring, we're actually now looking at a good mix of junior as well as senior.
I love to hear that. Yeah.
We're using AI to make our customers more efficient. We're reducing OpEx for them. What that translates into is better customer value, at the same time, low cost of running operations.
Across the vast majority of founders, engineers, and researchers, one truth truly stood out. AI doesn't replace collaboration, it's supercharging it. Now let's see how agents are achieving real autonomy. Automating repetitive work frees humans for creativity. Autonomy means delegating the mundane. Parallelism at scale, that's pretty much true autonomy.
And I have two daughters, like a 9 and 11-year-old, and they are like building like real video games.
Oh, that's
like
so cool.
how they want to, like with just like a few commands and everything. So I think this is like pretty incredible time to be around.
Independent builders can now reach scale once reserved for very large organizations.
The biggest improvements do not threaten people's jobs. The biggest improvements are in areas like medical billing, where there are new companies that are growing rapidly to tens of millions of dollars of revenue in a year, and sort of automating these like awful kind of like back office processes. But they're not happening inside a company where the company then lays off 20% of the workforce. It's sort of net new companies that are creating these new technologies.
What do you think of the idea of the one-person billion-dollar company?
I think that absolutely could be a thing. Yeah, I don't see any reason why. In fact, I wouldn't be terribly surprised to find out that has happened.
Because I've been working with this recently, since I'm still involved in JavaScript open source communities that use frameworks that aren't React and Express, which is not what Claude wants you to do, but looking at patterns that Svelte is adopting. Or we use Rust internally to build the Warp client, which uses our own UI framework. So these are completely different, sort of off the beaten path tech stacks. And in order to use it effectively, you need to bring in a lot of your own team's context, write more effective documentation so that when it goes and gathers context, it's able to do so quickly. Because something that Claude tends to bias towards is just writing code pretty quickly after it's gathered context for about 30 seconds or a minute. So you want to make sure that context gathering phase is really, really valuable. And some of that comes from you bring in field knowledge to your initial prompt, so that you're not coming in and asking for a feature. You're coming in with an architecture diagram with image uploads, or you're coming in with the specific libraries that it should or should not install so that it's using the correct tools.
I am building a lot of agents for education. I have an agent that is supporting kids who struggle with math, like it detects their misconception. They're like solving math on paper. In real time, detects their misconceptions based on a benchmark of math misconceptions I built, and then provide solutions or suggestions and questions for them to practice the math concept. Once you can use like this more advanced reasoning models and you give them longer time to compute, like the test time compute gets extended significantly, and you combine that with good specification for different domains. Like let's say you want to discover a new drug for liver treatment, like liver fibrosis, and they actually tested this. If you have a good specification of what are the constraints, and you have like one of these very powerful reasoning models, they found that they reduced the time in finding target treatments from years to weeks, right?
Yesterday here, I had the robot make me a coffee, and it did a very good job. Like it actually made a very good coffee.
I was looking at that. I did see a human in the loop, though. There's still a human in the loop there.
I mean, it's funny because they're doing almost a part that is easy, I feel like, because they took the order. They put the order in a phone, and then the robot would just churn out. It's still a bit slow, but the robot would just churn out one drink after the other. And it would do like all the cleaning and all the processing and moving things around. And I've heard, or they told the story that it's kind of like modeled after a great coffee maker who roasts the beans every week and just worked in the process. So they have that process down now. Something I think as an organization, you just need to be like ready to change and adapt. It's also an interesting thing that I've had in some conversations where people were like, I'm looking at your products and like how you integrate AI and that you do things around AI. Not that I necessarily think that they will solve all my problems and I want to use them tomorrow, but I want to see that as an organization, you are constantly changing and evolving with the trends. I love that. There are definitely trends.
Yeah.
I mean, trends make sense to some degree, and then we have like a shared understanding or conversation. But the trend itself might not be the end goal. Yeah. And so it's important to be part of the conversation, but you also need to have your own goal in mind.
Yes.
I think we are still really only scratching the surface of like what's possible, right? I think the best way really to make sure that your job is not replaced by AI, and this is actually what I tell some people in our company, is like you learn to work with these tools so that like you plus AI is better than just AI. If their products or their employees are not proficient with these tools, maybe some other team somewhere else in the world will be just better at their job using those tools, right? Every company needs to accept this new reality, right? And
I think I hate being like at one edge of the hype cycle. Like I'm always a cynic about these things, but like AI really feels like the industrial revolution for knowledge work. When people got access to just the web in the 90s, people were like, oh, you can just look up the answer. Like you don't have to like do hours and hours of research to figure it out. That it's going to make people intellectually lazy. And I'm like, no, it's just making people more efficient.
Right now, pretty much at Salesforce, there is a campaign to use more coding agents. We can say that 20% of the core code of Salesforce is written by coding agents right now, which is amazing. Not like many agents that we use internally. Engineering agents to provision servers, to control our infrastructure. We have HR agents to travel, to book travel, do like service tickets. So we have like many other tools that we are using internally. You need to have somebody who knows what it's building, who knows how things work, who knows how to validate that the thing this coding agent is generated to be able to use it. So it is just a productivity tool. It is not replacing me, it is augmenting me.
We build a tool for AI agents specifically, no longer for humans, but for agents. And I think that is where a lot of people here are focusing on. I think that is the focus because I don't think humans are disappearing, regardless of end of the world comment, but agents are going to be the number one user of all your tools going forward. And so how much are you thinking about agents as users versus humans as users, and how are you building out those tools is what I spend most of my day. I like the definition of, can an agent autonomously execute on a user's task end to end, basically without asking a human for intervention? And so for a lot of things today, it actually can't. So when it has to swipe a credit card, it still can't do it really well. Logging in kind of can do depending on if you have the right tools. So what are these new interfaces or paradigms that we have to create as the people here that your agent can actually go out and then swipe your credit card and you not be afraid of it doing that and you have a great dinner? And
so we even saw here yesterday, AI Engineer, that one of the most popular workshops was the MCP workshop. So what is MCP and why is it such a big deal?
So MCP removes one big problem, which is the integration problem. In the past, you had to basically build many integrations. So every vendor had to integrate with every AI framework, and every AI framework had to integrate with every vendor, right? So everyone had to do a lot of work. By MCP, with the MCP standard, you have basically one agreed upon standard of how agents talk to tools. And so everyone has to implement just MCP once. Every agent framework has to implement MCP support once. And then you basically get out of the box pluggability. And Fabric calls it like the USB-C of connectivity there.
MCP isn't just a feature, it's the backbone for the standardization of how we're going to be communicating with these LLMs going in the future.
From my perspective, there's a lot of more benefits to it.
Yes.
Because one of the interesting things is actually that federation moves to the client. What do I mean by this? So what I mean is you can have lots of different data sources that in the old days you had to connect and merge manually, basically, with enterprise background applications. But now you can actually pull the information from one source, let the agent decide what do I want to do next with the information, and then you can call another tool. So for instance, you can have 3 different databases that have nothing to do with each other, but still you as a user in the AI assistant client, you're able to pull data from one system and then, for instance, call the other 2 systems to enrich your information or generate a report or something like that. And that's actually one really undervalued part that MCP enables now, because it makes data integration so much easier, because it just happens in the client at the behest of the user and not whatever the enterprise vendor basically provided as an integration.
You can query the service using a language model, essentially, and you can connect to the service in a very regular way. So that is part of what I think MCP is great, because of the ubiquity of where the technology can go when you connect a bunch of things together very easily. If you're going to use AI to increase productivity, you should also use AI to help monitor itself.
Speed is thrilling, but speed without oversight can be extremely reckless.
The vast majority of us will not be fine-tuning models. I think that it makes a lot more sense for us to be taking the models that have been fine-tuned, or even those that haven't. Or in the case of MCP, you don't actually get to choose the model that is used, because the user is using whatever model they're using, and then it's talking to your MCP server. So that actually resembles the web really well, because we don't get to decide what device users are running our JavaScript on. We don't get to choose what browser they're using either. And so we're actually pretty well suited for that sort of environment.
The workshop that I gave, I completed the work for it, and I wanted to have steps along the way. And those steps, I had Claude break them up into different steps, but then I also had it run bash scripts that it wrote to verify that each step was accurate to where it needed to be. And then the workshop.md file that explained it all was also accurate at every step. It would take the code and paste it in and actually run the workshop to make sure that it was valid, so that I didn't have to do that. And I ran it 3 times and it was solid every single time.
Where do you see right now your personal workflow evolution happening in the next 12 months? Are there certain things that you're paying attention to?
Yeah, MCP is definitely one of them. I'm very focused on securing MCP too, or giving it authorization, because right now the use case isn't good. If I want GitHub to act on my behalf, I have to go edit a JSON file and add a personal access token, and that's fine for me, but that's not going to grow beyond developers.
Yeah.
So how do we bring these tools to the people who aren't going to be comfortable editing a JSON file? How do we make sure that it's secure for them? And how do we make sure that they know what it can do on their behalf, and also how they can really find the value that it brings to them?
I think people should be clear about what problems they want AI to solve for them, and really be clear about that, rather than sort of thinking about it as a magical tool that can solve everything right now.
In 3 days, 20 interviews and 3 themes: collaboration, autonomy, trust and safety. We need transparent models, continuous verification, and upskilling to ensure AI is serving our needs the way that we intend and want. AI agents are here, and the way that people are using them is truly blowing my mind. Especially at the conference, inference was a very, very large theme for many organizations. One thing that amazed me about the conference was truly the way that people were using agents in their day-to-day life. Some of the problems that they were solving with it were incredible. Not only was the conference fantastic, it was lively, it was packed. The electricity I personally gained from the conversations and the quality of those conversations, night and day difference. I don't think any conference talk could replace the quality of those conversations as a whole. It gave me key insight into areas that truly I wasn't thinking about, or even factoring into my decision-making process for the next year of where I'm going to be allocating a lot of my time.